Welcome to Honeybee. Don't forget to subscribe, and hit the bell. Real stories of love, lies, and betrayal, where every truth stings. Let's begin. It started like any other evening, quiet, ordinary, and yet filled with a strange kind of distance that had been growing between my wife and me for months. I came home from work later than usual, exhausted and starving, my tie loosened, and my head still full of meetings and emails. The lights in the kitchen were on, and I could smell something faintly burnt, not unpleasant, but definitely not intentional either. My wife, Lila, stood near the stove, her arms crossed, scrolling on her phone while the pot on the burner bubbled over. "Hey," I said softly, dropping my briefcase by the door. "Smells like something's cooking." She didn't look up. "Yeah, it was cooking." I tried. I walked closer, noticing the tone in her voice. It wasn't angry, more like frustrated, maybe even tired. I could see the mess on the counter. Open spice jars, splattered sauce, an unwashed cutting board. "You okay?" I asked. "Rough day?" That's when she sighed. Long, heavy, and sharp. "No, I'm just done, James. I'm not your cook. I'm tired of coming home and feeling like I have to feed a grown man after dealing with my own day." Her words hit me harder than I expected, not because they were cruel, but because of the truth in them. She'd been carrying a lot. I knew that. She worked full-time, too, and between her job, her friends, and trying to keep the house together, something inside her had clearly started to crack. But it was the way she said it. "I'm not your cook," that lingered. I nodded slowly. "All right," I said simply. She blinked, caught off guard. "All right. Yeah," I replied, taking off my jacket. "If you don't want to cook, that's fine. We'll figure something out." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue. But inside, something was shifting, a small voice that whispered, maybe I should stop expecting her to do things she doesn't want to do. The rest of the night passed quietly. She ordered takeout, ate half of it, and went to bed early. I sat in the living room alone, staring at the empty containers on the coffee table, replaying her words. "I'm not your cook." Those 5 words looped in my head like a broken record. The next morning, while she got ready for work, I made my own breakfast, just eggs and toast. And when she came into the kitchen, I smiled lightly. "Morning," I said. "Morning," she mumbled, clearly still a little irritated. I thought about saying something, about asking her if we could talk, but then I decided against it. Instead, I finished my breakfast quietly and left early for work. That afternoon, during my lunch break, I did something impulsive. I opened my phone, searched for part-time home cook services near me, and made a few calls. By the end of the day, I had arranged for a professional cook, a kind woman named Clara, to come by 3 evenings a week to prepare dinner. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't even about proving a point. I just didn't want to fight anymore. I wanted peace in my house. When I got home that evening, Lila was already there, sitting on the couch watching something on TV. "Hey," I said, hanging my keys. "So, small update. I hired someone to help with the cooking 3 nights a week." Her head snapped toward me. "You did what?" "I hired a cook," I repeated calmly. "Just part-time. You said you didn't want to do it, so I figured I'd take care of it another way." Her mouth opened, then closed again. "You can't be serious, James. You really went and—" "Lila," I interrupted gently. "You said you're tired. I get it. I don't want to make you feel like this house is a job you didn't sign up for." She stared at me like she was trying to read whether I was joking. "It's not about that," she muttered. You really went ahead without even talking to me first?" "I thought that's what you wanted," I said. "You said you weren't my cook." Her jaw tightened, and for a moment, the silence in the room felt like a storm waiting to happen. "I didn't mean it like that," she finally said, her voice quieter now. I was frustrated. "You think hiring someone fixes what's wrong between us?" "No," I admitted, "but maybe it stops us from fighting about dinner." She didn't respond. Instead, she grabbed her purse and went upstairs. That night, we slept back to back. The distance between us in bed felt wider than ever. The next evening, Clara showed up for the first time. She was polite cheerful, and incredibly professional. She brought her own apron, her knives, and even fresh herbs from her garden. "Don't worry, I'll take care of everything," she said with a warm smile. Lila came downstairs just as Clara began chopping vegetables. The sight of another woman in her kitchen, even a friendly, harmless one, clearly threw her off. "Oh," Lila said awkwardly. "So you're—" "Clara," the woman said brightly. "Your new cook. James told me you both have long days, so I'm here to make life easier." I could see Lila's face tighten, though she smiled politely. "That's nice of you," she said. Dinner was ready by 7. Clara had made roasted salmon, lemon potatoes, and a salad that looked like something from a restaurant menu. It smelled amazing. "Please sit," Clara said before quietly excusing herself. Lila sat across from me in silence. I could feel her eyes on me as I served myself. "So?" I asked. "Good." She hesitated, took a bite, and exhaled. "Yeah, it's good." But her tone wasn't admiration. It was discomfort. After Clara left, the silence between us returned. Lila leaned back in her chair, folding her arms. "You really think this fixes everything?" she asked again. "No," I said, "but I think it helps." "What it does," she shot back, "is make me feel like a guest in my own home. Like you replaced me." Her voice cracked slightly at the end, and I finally realized this wasn't about food anymore. It was about pride and maybe guilt. "I didn't replace you, Lila," I said gently. "You said you were tired. I just want to make things easier for both of us." Her eyes softened, but her guard stayed up. "I didn't mean I wanted to stop caring for you," she whispered. "I just wanted you to see how much I do every day without feeling taken for granted." I leaned forward, and I do see it now. "I guess I just thought giving you space was the right thing." "Space is one thing," she murmured, "but this feels like distance." Those words hung in the air, heavy and true. For the next few weeks, Clara continued to come by. The meals were perfect, the kitchen always spotless, and yet the warmth that once filled our home seemed to fade a little each day. Lila stopped sitting with me at dinner. Sometimes she'd eat in the living room. Other times she'd say she wasn't hungry at all. And I, in my effort to fix what was broken, had unknowingly built a wall between us. One Saturday morning, I woke up early and found Lila standing by the window, staring outside with her coffee cup untouched. "You're up early," I said quietly. She didn't turn around. "I've been thinking," she said after a long pause. "Do you even miss when we used to cook together?" I walked closer, unsure how to answer. "I do," I said honestly. "I miss a lot of things." She turned to face me then, her eyes filled with something between sadness and confusion. "Then why did you stop trying?" That question burned. I didn't have a clear answer. Somewhere along the way, we both started reacting instead of understanding. She felt unseen and I felt unappreciated. Two people who loved each other, slowly forgetting how to speak the same language. I thought I was helping. I said finally. She nodded, but her silence said otherwise. When Clara arrived that evening, Lila told her politely, "You can take the night off. I'll cook today." I raised an eyebrow. "You sure?" She smiled faintly, though her eyes were distant. "Yeah, I want to." She moved around the kitchen like someone reclaiming lost territory, chopping, stirring, humming under her breath. The smell of garlic and butter filled the air, and for the first time in weeks, it felt like home again. When we finally sat down to eat, she looked at me, her expression softer now. "I didn't mean what I said that day," she began quietly. "When I said I'm not your cook, I was just angry and overwhelmed. It felt like you didn't notice me anymore." I set down my fork. "And I didn't mean to make you feel replaced," I said. "I just thought giving you a break would help." She sighed, nodding. Maybe we both stopped listening. Maybe, I agreed. We ate in silence after that. But it wasn't cold or distant anymore. It was a kind of silence that comes when two people are slowly trying to find their way back. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed, that the simplicity we once had couldn't be restored overnight. Love, I realized, wasn't about grand gestures or convenient solutions. Sometimes it was about standing in the middle of the mess and choosing to care anyway. And though I didn't know it yet, the hardest part of our story was still ahead. Over the next few days, things between Lila and me felt fragile, like we were walking on glass. We were polite, we talked, but something unspoken lingered in the air, the realization that our love had turned into a series of silent negotiations. She'd cook occasionally again, but never with the same joy she once had. I could see it in the way she moved, careful, calculated, distant. Sometimes, I'd catch her looking at me across the table, as if she was trying to remember how we'd gotten here. How two people who once laughed over burnt pancakes now struggled to make eye contact over perfectly cooked meals. One evening, as we sat together after dinner, she finally spoke. "James," she said softly, "do you ever feel like we're living beside each other instead of each other?" Her words hit me hard. I looked up from my plate. "Yeah, I admit it. I've felt that way for a while." She sighed, pushing her hair behind her ear. "I used to love cooking for you. It made me feel needed, like I was giving something small but meaningful to us. But somewhere along the way, it started to feel like a routine, like something I had to do, not something I wanted to." "I get that," I said quietly. "I guess I stopped noticing when things started feeling heavy for you. I just assumed everything was fine, because you didn't say anything." She smiled faintly, though it was sad. "I didn't say anything because I didn't want to sound like I was complaining. I thought if I kept pushing through, it would get easier. And instead," I said, finishing her thought, "it pushed you further away." Her eyes glistened for a second, but she blinked it away. Maybe both of us stopped showing up the way we used to. We sat in silence after that, the sound of rain tapping against the window filling the space between us. It was one of those silences that didn't need to be broken, the kind that forces you to reflect on everything you took for granted. The next day, I canceled Clara's services. When I called her, she was understanding, even kind. "Couples go through things," she said gently. "Sometimes, food brings people together more than you think." She wasn't wrong. That night, when I told Lila, she didn't look surprised. "Thank you," she said softly. "I didn't do it to prove anything," I replied. "I just think maybe we need to learn how to take care of each other again. Without help." For a moment, she didn't respond. Then she nodded, a small smile tugging at the corners of her lips. "I'd like that." We started small, cooking together once a week, just simple dishes like pasta or soup. We'd laugh when something burned or when I accidentally added too much salt. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. One Saturday, while chopping onions, I looked at her and said, "You know, I didn't realize how much I missed this." She glanced up, smiling softly. "Me too." There was warmth again, fragile, yes, but slowly returning. But not everything healed right away. There were still arguments, small ones but meaningful. Sometimes she'd bring up the cook or how easily I'd replaced her, and I'd feel defensive. Other times, I'd remind her how her words had made me feel unwanted, and she'd go quiet. Healing, I learned, isn't a straight line. It's a series of stumbles and small steps forward. One evening, we decided to go out for dinner instead of cooking. The restaurant was quiet, candlelit, the kind of place we hadn't been to in months. As we waited for our meal, Lila reached across the table and took my hand. "I think," she said slowly, "I got so used to doing everything myself that I forgot how to let you help. And when I finally snapped, it came out the wrong way." I squeezed her hand gently. "And I think I got so used to you taking care of everything that I forgot to appreciate what that meant." She smiled. "So we both forgot, huh?" "Seems like it," I said. Our food arrived then, nothing fancy, just comfort food. But as we ate, something felt lighter. The tension that filled the space between us for weeks was slowly dissolving. That night, back home, she leaned against me on the couch, her head resting on my shoulder. "Thank you for not giving up on me," she whispered. "I never planned to," I said quietly. "I just didn't know how to reach you." "You did," she murmured. "You just didn't realize it yet." The weeks that followed felt different. There were no grand gestures, no sudden transformations, just small, consistent efforts. We talked more. We laughed again. And one Sunday morning, when I came downstairs, I found her in the kitchen wearing one of my old shirts. humming softly as she cooked breakfast. I smiled, leaning against the doorframe. You sure you want to cook today? I don't want to be accused of treating you like my personal chef again. She turned, a teasing smile playing on her lips. I'm cooking because I want to, not because I have to. I walked over and kissed her forehead. That's all I ever wanted. She paused for a moment, her eyes softening. You know, when I said I wasn't your cook, I didn't realize those words would hurt you as much as they did. They didn't just hurt, I said honestly. They made me realize how far apart we drifted. She nodded, understanding. I guess it took losing the simple things to remember how much they mattered. We ate breakfast together, quietly that morning, sunlight spilling across the table. It wasn't dramatic or cinematic, just two people rediscovering what it meant to be partners. Months later, when I think back to that night, the night she said those 5 words, I don't feel anger anymore. If anything, I feel gratitude, because that moment forced us to confront what we've been avoiding. It stripped away the politeness, the routines, the quiet resentments, and made us face each other honestly. Marriage isn't about who cooks or cleans or earns more. It's about seeing the other person fully, tired, imperfect, human, and choosing to stay anyway. And sometimes the things we say in frustration become the very lessons that teach us how to love better. A few months after things started to feel normal again, I came home from work to find something waiting for me on the counter. A handwritten note. It read, "Dinner's in the oven, but tonight, I don't want to be your cook. I just want to be your wife. Love, Lila." I smiled, feeling my chest tighten with emotion. That night, as we ate together, I realized something simple but powerful. Love doesn't survive on grand gestures. It survives on understanding, forgiveness, and the willingness to try again. Epilogue. Months passed, and the fight over food became a distant memory. We began hosting small dinners with friends, laughing in the kitchen again, teasing each other like before. Sometimes, when guests complimented the food, Lila would grin and point at me. "He helped," she'd say proudly. And I did, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. Because being in that kitchen with her reminded me that partnership isn't about dividing tasks. It's about sharing life. She still teases me sometimes. "Remember when you hired someone because I said I wasn't your cook?" I'd laugh. "Yeah, guess I learned my lesson." Then she'd smile and add, "No, we learned ours." And that's the truth. Sometimes love isn't found in the big moments. It's found in burnt toast, quiet apologies, and the gentle realization that even after all the fights and misunderstandings, you still choose each other.